times
And
throughout.
just to be clear, when you say not all cultures are equal, which cultures, in your view, are inferior?
I mean, quite a few, to be honest with you. I'm not going to sit here and call out people's specific cultures, however.
Well, which ones? Which cultures are
Why
inferior?
not? Call it out.
Yeah.
Which ones?
Sure, fine. Afghanistan would be a good example.
That's a country, not a culture.
Well, of course, the culture that comes from Afghanistan, we can talk about the Muslim culture that comes from the Middle Eastern countries. I would argue that those aren't particularly equal. I mean, we see a lot of...
So the whole Muslim culture of what, over a billion... Well, actually...
She built a brand on immigration without assimilation is invasion. Her own father is an immigrant. And on live TV, she said it anyway. Priya Patel goes viral, telling 30 million people that immigrants have a duty to assimilate. So Piers Morgan asks about her family. Turns out her father is a full-blooded Indian man, chased out of Uganda by a dictator who came in as a teenager and waited his turn. The exact story she now calls a problem. Did your father invade the UK? No, she says, but there's a duty to assimilate. The knife's already in, and she doesn't feel it. And if you've watched this, just assimilate talk and known where it was heading. Watch where it lands. Piers asks which cultures she thinks are inferior. She dodges. He asks again. Then she says it. Muslim culture. Nearly 2 billion people, waved off as not particularly equal. He gives her 3 chances to walk it back. She clarifies it forward every time. Then the trap. She's a Christian, so is Piers. As a fellow Christian, he asks, "Didn't you learn all men are created equal?" And she has to agree, out loud, that the faith she claims says the opposite of the brand she sells. That contradiction isn't ours to manufacture. She built it herself, on camera. If you're tired of bigotry dressed up as common sense about culture, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. We let them talk until the thing underneath says its own name. I'm Neil. This is The Honest Perspective. A woman whose father fled a dictator should know exactly what "not all cultures are equal" has always meant. Let's get into it.
The term viral is chronically overused, but there's no question it applies to Priya Patel, the Conservative influencer whose video on immigration has been viewed 30 million times this week so far.
This is your friendly reminder that immigration without assimilation is invasion. Got it?
Well, the problem with viral clips, of course, is that you never know if the 6-second sensation can back up their hubris on the big stage. So we thought we'd put it to the test with an uncensored debate. Joining me now are Priya Patel, the aforementioned Conservative influencer, and Brian Shapiro, host of Pushing the Limits. So first of all, Brian Shapiro, this got a huge kickback, this very short video. It's gone hugely viral, obviously. The main sort of issue that people have had with this is that Priya Patel is basically lecturing people about immigration in the United States, but is called Priya Patel and therefore presumably has a heritage which might be in conflict with the statement. What's your view of this?
Well, first of all, Piers, good to be back with you. Good to see you. Yeah, you're right. This video certainly went viral. My issue is look at all the white nationalists that were commenting, and she knows this, on her social media pages. That's what's concerning to me, the hatred and the white nationalists that are commenting there. That would be issue number one. Issue number two for me, listen, I have no problem with people coming to this country, learning the language, and taking some classes and learning the history of America and culture. I have no problem with that at all. But what I want in this country, and I think what most people want in this country, is diversity as well. Now, we can go back to her family. I don't know a lot about her family, but in my opinion, a lot of her views and a lot of the stuff that she talks about would lead to her never being born in this country to begin with. And I think that's where she's getting some of the pushback. Listen, I don't support any racism. I don't support some of the hateful comments that she's received. But like I said, there's a lot of comments on her social media and a lot of white nationalists. That's very concerning to me, Piers, and I have a serious problem with that. And that's not culture of America. And that's where my issue lies here.
Okay. Well, Priya Patel, you're the woman of the moment this week. This has gone massively viral. First of all, are you surprised by how much pickup this has had, this clip?
To be honest, I am surprised with the amount of attention that it's gotten, but not surprised altogether, because I've had a viral video that hit on a very similar point prior to this. It didn't go nearly as viral, so of course that is shocking. But yes, I understand that it is a very provocative statement coming from somebody named Priya Patel. However, of course, these people have no idea about my family history and my background.
Right, which is perfectly fair enough. So let's just clear that up, because I think that's obviously key to the whole debate, because you were born in the United States, is that right?
Yes.
Right, but where were your parents from? Are they from the United States or somewhere else?
My mother is from the United States. My father immigrated here as a young boy, and from England, actually, not from India.
Okay, so he's English?
Yeah,
he's English, your father, or?
He was born in Uganda, immigrated to England when he was about 3 years old, after the dictator Idi Amin chased out all of the Indians out of Uganda, and waited their turn to be able to come to the United States, and did so when he was in his teenage years.
So you say all the Indians. So is your father part Indian, or what's his background?
My father is full Indian.
He's full Indian. So your father's Indian, your mother is American, or is she, what is she? What's her ethnicity?
American, yes.
And what's her ethnicity?
On my mother's side, I have ancestry date. Mixed European. She's a half German, quarter English, and then the rest is mixed European. But aside from that, I mean, I have ancestry on my mother's side of her family dating back to the 1700s in the United States. So.
Okay, so I'm only just trying to clarify, because as you know, there's been a lot of speculation. Not much is known about your family, but a lot of people will say, so your father was an Indian Indian immigrant from Uganda into the UK. You know, how does that sit with you saying what you said? Because your friendly reminder that immigration without assimilation is invasion. I mean, did your father invade the UK?
No, of course not. But, you know, there is a personal duty on the part of immigrants to assimilate to the culture of the country that they are blessed enough to come to, especially when it comes to, of course, that sort of situation. But honestly, anybody that is blessed enough to come to the United States in particular.
I mean, Brian, look, that is an argument. People say, yeah, a lot of countries, the United States, the UK, others have had big issues with controlling immigration. And a lot of people say if you come to a country from another place and you refuse to assimilate in any way and want to just stay out of the society and culture that you've come into, that people shouldn't tolerate that. What's your view of that argument?
Completely disagree with that. And in my personal opinion, I think in a way it's a bigoted view. You can come to this country and you could learn about our culture. I have no problem with that. But that doesn't mean you have to abide by our cultures and what we do. The thing that makes America great is our diversity and the fact that there are all sorts of different cultures, people with different backgrounds that live in the United States of America. That's the way it should be. The idea that people should be forced after they come to this country to do exactly what American U.S. citizens tell them to do is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. In this country, we have freedoms. And when you become a naturalized citizen, and if you come into this country the right way, you should be allowed to do whatever you want as far as your culture is concerned, your religion is concerned. And for somebody to say, you must do this or you must do that, that's against everything the United States of America stands for. And I wish she would at least admit that in this debate.
Okay, well, do you admit that, Priya?
No, I don't admit that. You know, we have cultures and norms that we have a duty to uphold as a society, and I think that you know, it should be enforced to some degree. And whether it's on a societal or a governmental level, I guess that's up for us to eventually decide, but it has to be implemented some way or another.
Well, everybody has to abide by the same... Well,
culture...
look, to be clear, everyone has to abide by the laws of the country that they're living in. Right, so that's just a given in somewhere like the United States or UK. So we can all agree that, because that's obviously a fact. But when it comes to cultural differences, in a country of 340 million people, there are obviously myriad cultures, ethnicities, religious creeds, and so on in the United States. It's a real hot pot of people. Famously, it's how the United States was created. People came from all over the world. You know, I'm just curious what you mean by assimilation. What should these people all be doing in a uniform way?
Well, I would disagree with the statement, Piers, that America was built on the fact that people came from all over the world. No, it was a very, very select few group of people that came here to the United States and built it. Of course, since then, we've welcomed a good chunk of the entire world to come to our country,
Well,
which I would argue is, yes. You said that it was built on the idea that people were coming from all over the world.
Well,
but
the
aside
whole
from the fact, I'm
premise
sure
of the
we
United
probably
States of
agree.
America is that people have come from everywhere, right? That's been
Right.
that's been the glorious selling point of the United States, is it's open to all. You got to come in legally, and that's been a contentious issue. But once you get there, I'm not
Sure.
sure. As Brian says, why should you feel compelled to abide by a specific culture? I mean, what is the specific American culture, for example? How would you articulate it?
Why exactly? If you didn't want to assimilate to American culture, live as an American, why exactly would you leave the country that you came from to begin with if you're only going to bring your culture's customs and norms and implement them
Maybe
here
the same
and
reason your
completely
father left
disregard that of the
war-torn
American
Uganda.
people?
You know, maybe the same reason your father left war-torn Uganda.
Do you not understand that?
Sure, but
do you
if
not
they-
understand that there are people that are seeking asylum that want a better life for themselves and their families, that are afraid that they could even lose their lives? Do you understand how many people are seeking asylum and are in fear of their life? For you to make the statement
That is a
people
very
coming
small
into
percentage of people coming to the United
Okay,
States. Very,
but
very
you're
small
making
percentage. And the large majority of people committing
I'm just saying
the
you're
large,
making
the
assumptions.
large majority of people claiming asylum are actually economic migrants. They're not from war-torn countries or suffering
but
under
when you
political
said
persecution.
one of the other comments, Priya, you said, which did get a lot of attention, you said not all cultures are equal, and we shouldn't be importing the
that's
third
correct.
world. So what did you mean by the third world?
I mean, I think that's pretty evident. There are a large majority of countries that are still considered third world. They are not.
Well, which
they're not
ones?
privy to any of the.
Which ones would you say are third world?
I mean, you could take into account a lot of countries in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia.
Well, give me some
there are
names
plenty
of countries.
to come from this list.
Give me some names.
You could probably take in Uganda. For example, would actually
So
probably be
Uganda's a
considered
third world
country.
country for you.
I would believe so. Yes.
Where else do you think is a third world country?
You know, there are parts of countries like Bangladesh and a great many others, but that's
would you
somewhat aside from
classify
the point.
India as a third world country?
I think there's been a lot of debate whether it is or not. There are certain parts of India that are, of course, very westernized and would probably be considered a first world country. However, I think there are a lot of parts of India that, yes, should be considered a third world country still today.
And what do you mean by third world? What does that mean?
I mean, we've had a lot of technological advances and societal advances that a lot of parts of the world have not managed to either keep up with or come to that at this point in time. But to think that people can come from these, for lack of better words, dated societies and just be placed in America and they just magically assimilate, especially when we bring them here en masse, I think that is a massive, massive issue because, of course, these people are not prepared for this. I think if we did it on a very small scale, that it could be successful. Of course, we've seen that plenty of times throughout.
And just to be clear, when you say not all cultures are equal, which cultures, in your view, are inferior?
I mean, quite a few, to be honest with you. I'm not going to sit
Sure,
here and
which
call
ones?
out people's specific cultures.
Well,
However,
which ones? Which cultures
mean,
are
Why
inferior?
not? Call it out.
Yeah.
Which ones?
sure, fine. Afghanistan would be a good example.
That's a country, not a culture.
Well, of course, the culture that comes from Afghanistan, we can talk about the Muslim culture that comes from the Middle Eastern countries. I would argue that those aren't particularly equal. I mean, we see a lot
So
of
the whole Muslim culture of
political
what, over a billion, well, actually nearly 2 billion people.
I didn't say the whole Muslim culture.
Well, you said Muslim.
You just said it.
Correct. I
So
said yes. I
the
said
Muslim
some of the Muslim
culture
cultures
you
that we're
believe
seeing
is
from
an
the Middle
inferior.
East.
Well, just to be, I'm just trying to work out what you believe. So you think the Muslim culture is an inferior culture?
In a lot of ways, yes.
Wow.
It's just so ridiculous, Piers.
Okay.
This is so ridiculous.
Brian, I think we're
she's
getting to why this comment went viral. Why both those comments went viral.
First of all, it's extremely offensive. I would ask her how many Muslim people does she know, number one. Number two, when you take an entire group of people,
Quite a
which
few,
is
and they're
exactly
actually
what
very westernized.
I didn't
at that.
interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. Please let me finish. When
You
you
did
take an
actually, in
entire
fact,
group
prior, but
of
that's okay.
people, when you take an entire group of people and say they are lesser than us, that is pure bigotry. And I'm not surprised.
Actually, I
Excuse me,
stated in that video my exact. You made an incorrect statement about my position.
You just thought Afghanistan was a culture, so don't talk to me about statements that people make that are not correct. Okay?
Countries have
going back to
culture,
this,
Brian.
Pierce. Here's the issue we have here. Okay? And I'm going to instill politics into this. When you go on her social media page, she echoes a lot of similar things that MAGA Republicans echo, taking an entire group of people like the Laura Loomers of the world, saying they all should be deported, or in this case, taking all Muslims and saying they're inferior to Americans. She has a MAGA hat on her social media page.
Not what I said.
And what she does is she caters to MAGA Republicans in her base. It's why she gets all the views she gets. And I think it's extremely offensive, I'll say it once again, to take an entire group of people. That would be, how would you feel if somebody said everybody that is Indian is inferior to Americans? You would say that's racist. That's a terrible thing to say.
Well, hang on. Let me ask the question.
I would never say that.
Well, let me ask the question. Would you say that about Indians, Priya?
Of course, and I would not. Of course not. I would never say that about any race or group of people.
You literally
That's not
just
what
said
I
it
said.
about Muslims.
You just said it about Muslims.
You couldn't have been clearer. I gave you the chance to clarify, and you clarified it.
And that's perfectly fine. Look, I do think America has a superior
No, you're
culture,
fine
and
to
I would
have
like
that
to
view, and it's
uphold
perfectly
that.
fine that we think it's a bigoted view and very hypocritical if you then
That's
say
fine.
that other vast countries like India are exempt from your bigotry. Because, well, guess what? Your father happens to be Indian.
That's, of course, never what I said, Piers.
No, but people think you're a hypocrite.
You guys are both taking things completely out of context.
They say your father's an Indian, but here you are condemning all
context.
Muslims as somehow culturally inferior.
That's fine. I've been very critical about Indian immigration to this country too. I'm not picking and choosing
But when you
one
say
group
that,
of
when you say
people,
that
I
some
simply
cultures are less equal, you're a Christian, I understand. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
So
and if you would let me clarify exactly what I said.
As a fellow Christian, well, hang on. As a fellow Christian, I thought the teachings were quite clear that all men are created equally. Where does this sit with that?
Correct, Pearson. Did you watch? I don't know if either of you watched the entirety of that video where I was talking about culture. I specifically did state that all people are created equal under the eyes of God and the law, of course. However, we do have a society that we're supposed to uphold here in America, and like you, Piers, in England, right? You don't want a lot of foreign invaders coming into your country and completely causing the collapse of your society and of your country. If people are blessed enough to come to America,
So would you,
or come to
out of
England,
interest,
they
to
do have
stop this invasion, as you put it, would you deport all foreigners from the United States?
No, I would not deport all foreigners from the United States. I would certainly deport all of the illegal foreigners that are here in the United States.
What about those that just didn't sign up to your worldview of what the culture should be?
No, I don't necessarily think that they should all be deported from the United States, but I think we do need a very slow and if not a halt on immigration as a whole currently, so that we can, as a society and allow our government to continue to help these people assimilate to our culture, actually fix our immigration system so that it works with our country, so that we can keep it intact as it is, and honestly, maybe get back to what we were, originally founded on.
I think we'll leave it there. Brian and Priya, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me start with the structure of what Piers Morgan actually did here, because it's worth naming. He didn't debate her. He interviewed her. There's a difference, and it's the whole thing. He just kept handing Priya Patel the shovel and asking one more polite question, and she dug all the way to the bottom on live television. No trap she didn't walk into with her eyes open. Here's the setup she built for herself. Her viral line, 30 million views, is immigration without assimilation is invasion. That's the brand. So Piers does the obvious thing nobody in her comment section does. He asks about her family. And the answer detonates the whole premise. Her father is a full-blooded Indian man who was chased out of Uganda when the dictator Idi Amin expelled the country's Indian population, fled to England as a small child, then waited his turn and immigrated again. That is not a footnote. That is the exact profile. Non-white, foreign-born, twice migrated from a third world country by her own definition. That her entire content brand exists to pathologize. And when Piers asks the only question that matters, did your father invade the UK? She says no, of course not, and then in the same breath insists there's a duty to assimilate. She cannot see that she just exempted her own father from a rule she once enforced on everyone who looks like him. Now watch the part your title is built on, because this is where it stops being awkward and becomes something uglier. Piers asks her, directly, which culture she considers inferior. And I want you to notice she doesn't want to say it. She dodges. I'm not going to call out people's specific cultures, he asks again. She reaches for Afghanistan, and Piers corrects her. That's a country, not a culture. So she pivots and lands on the real target, Muslim culture. Piers, to his credit, makes sure it's unmissable. You mean the culture of nearly 2 billion people? And she says yes, in a lot of ways, inferior. 3 separate times he gives her the exit. 3 times she declines it. That's not a gotcha. A gotcha is when you twist someone's words. This is the opposite. It's a man carefully making sure her words are exactly as clear as she meant them, and her choosing, repeatedly, to keep them that way. I want to be precise about why the third world bit underneath this matters, because it's the tell. When Piers presses her to name third world countries, she names Uganda, her own father's birthplace, and half laughs while doing it. Sits with India for a second, allows that parts of it still qualify. This is someone drawing a civilizational hierarchy in real time and placing her own bloodline on the wrong side of the line she's drawing. And the mechanism she uses to justify it. These are dated societies, people who are not prepared, who can't magically assimilate when you bring them en masse. That is not a new argument. That is the oldest argument there is, the one that has justified exclusion and worse for a century, wearing a 2025 influencer's vocabulary. Strip the phrasing, and it's the same claim every time. Those people are not ready for this civilization. Then comes the cleanest beat of the whole exchange, and it's the fellow Christian move. Piers establishes she's a Christian. He's a Christian. And he asks her, as a fellow Christian, weren't the teachings pretty clear that all men are created equal? And now she's cornered by her own faith. She has to say yes. She actually retreats to, all people are created equal under the eyes of God and the law, which means, in the space of one interview, she has affirmed that all people are created equal and that Muslim culture is inferior. Both. Out loud. She doesn't reconcile them because they can't be reconciled. She just holds both and hopes nobody notices the seam. Piers noticed. He held it up. That's the job. Now let me give Brian Shapiro his due, because he lands the sharpest political point in the room. He names the thing everyone else is dancing around. The reason this went viral isn't that it's brave truth-telling. It's that it's a business model. He points out the MAGA hat on her page, the white nationalist accounts cheering in her comments, and the fact that catering to exactly that audience is why the views come. That's the part I want you to hold on to. This isn't a woman blurting out an unpopular opinion at cost to herself. This is a woman who found out that a specific flavor of bigotry pays and built a following on delivering it. The virality isn't a side effect. It's the product. So let me bring this all the way down to the ground, because up in the clouds of culture and assimilation, it stays comfortably abstract, and it should not stay abstract. When someone with 30 million views says Muslim culture is inferior and we shouldn't be importing the third world, that language does not stay on a screen. It lands on the Muslim kid getting side-eyed at school the next morning. It lands on the family at the grocery store who can feel the temperature of a room change. It lands on the asylum seeker. The person Brian rightly reminds her is fleeing for their life, the exact situation her own father was in, who now gets recategorized as an invader by a woman whose dad was once that same frightened person waiting his turn. Words with 30 million views have a body count of dignity. Somebody always pays for them, and it's never the influencer. And here's the contradiction I want you to leave with, because it's the one that unlocks the whole thing. She wants a slowdown or a total halt on immigration so America can get back to what we were originally founded on. Think about what that sentence requires her to believe. The country she's demanding we return to is a country that, at the founding she's romanticizing, would not have had her. Would not have had her father. Would have looked at a twice-migrated Indian family and shown them the door. She is nostalgic for a gate that would have been locked against her own name. That's not a policy position. That's a person who climbed through a door and now wants to weld it shut behind her and can't quite admit that's what she's doing. So here's where it lands. Piers didn't win this by being clever. He won it by being patient, by refusing to let just common sense about culture hide from its own conclusion. Ask the question. Then ask it again. Then let the person tell you, in their own voice, exactly what they mean. The daughter of an immigrant, defending a brand built on calling immigration invasion, calling 2 billion people's culture inferior while professing that all are equal under God. Nobody wrote that script for her. She performed it herself, and the only thing Piers did was refuse to change the subject. The father fled a dictator. The daughter sells the gate. And not all cultures are equal has always meant the same thing. It just found a new face to say it. If you believe the people monetizing this stuff should have to say the quiet part into a live microphone and own it, subscribe to The Honest Perspective. We don't twist their words. We just refuse to let them hide from them. I'm Neil. She's nostalgic for a country that would have turned her own father away at the door. Sit with that one. That's The Honest Perspective. And that's where I'll leave you.